All right, welcome back everyone to this series where I'm building out this layout that is right here from Front End Mentor. If you've missed the previous videos from this series, I'd strongly recommend starting with those. They are linked down below. But if you just want to keep going from here, I've also linked to a GitHub repo just down below, which is the starting point for this video. So for this one, we're going to be working on the navigation, trying to get these parts here to, trying to get this part to look like what we have here. We're going to make the mobile navigation and we're going to make it look like we see over here as well. We do have quite a bit of work to do to actually get this to be functional and get to work. So we might as well just jump right on into the code. And for this one, I am going to be leaving this pretty small and trying to focus a little bit more on the design. So we can get started. And my son was on the computer in between sessions right there. So we can get rid of that and get started on this. And to do this, the first thing we need to do is bring in the button that we're going to be using. There's a whole bunch of ways we could, well, not a whole bunch, there's a good way to do this. There are like checkbox hacks and other things, but we're not going to do that in this one. But what we'll do, let's go find where my navigation is, which is right here. And I'm actually going to come in right here and we're going to add in a button. Now I'm using a button here because it's something we want to be able to interact with. So it makes sense to have that there. And let's come in and add a class on here. And the class, we can just call this mobile nav toggle because that's what it's going to do. The thing is, we do want to do a little bit more here. We don't want to just have this button that does stuff. Just like before, I was talking a lot about accessibility and how screen readers interact with things. We want to take that into account with this as well. And so to be able to do that, what I'm going to do is come here and do an area controls. And so what this is going to say is what does this button control? If I click on this, what is it interacting or what's it causing to do something? Because the button itself, nothing's happening. So here we can write in primary navigation like that. The thing with area controls is it can't look at this class here. It has to look at an ID. So I'm going to come here and add an ID on here as well, primary navigation. Now, we might be doing some styling on this class, and you might say, well, couldn't we do the styling on the class or on the ID and just get rid of the class? And I guess you could, but in general, I tend to work where IDs are either used for hooking with JavaScript, even though these days I tend to use data attributes for that. But IDs sometimes for that, and IDs often for linking things together. So a label to a form element or an area controls to something. It's also useful for navigating within a page if you have anchors and things like that. Whereas I generally leave classes for styling things. Now, another thing that we're going to do inside this button is we're actually going to add a little bit of text. And I'm going to write menu here. And around this, we're going to put a span. So I guess I should have done the span first. But we'll put the span there with the menu inside, and this is just the word menu. So this is when a screen reader gets there, they will say the word menu and they know that it controls the primary navigation. So it just gives a little bit of context. Again, this is like with our links down there at the bottom, those social icons where nobody, if it's just an icon with no text associated with it, a screen reader has no idea what's really going on there. So this just gives a little bit extra. Now this time I'm doing this rather than an area label. I'm going to put in some actual content and we're going to hide it. So we can do that with a class of, you'll see a lot of SR only, which is screen reader only. I'm going to do the exact same thing. I've just started calling it visually hidden just to make it a little bit more obvious, because SR only, maybe someone comes across that and doesn't quite know what it is. So hopefully this is just a little bit more explicit in exactly what it's doing. So yeah, let's try and get this all on the screen at once. Let's hit save and there we go. So my button has the class, it has my area controls of primary navigation, which is linking over to my UL here, which has, actually I do want that on the UL. I put it on my nav, but it doesn't open and close the nav itself. It opens and closes this list here. So we can actually move that off of there and put that ID here on the UL. I do apologize for that. But yeah, we'll put the ID on the UL itself because that's what's actually going to be showing and hiding. Now, the other thing that we need to do in the menu here, or in our button, not in the menu, is outside of the span. We also want to include we have the hamburger icon itself, right? This thing right there. So we're actually going to do two different ones. We're going to include both at the same time. There's other ways that we could do this and just like actually switch the icon with JavaScript. But I think what we'll do is I'm going to put them both in the DOM. They're just SVGs, super lightweight, and we'll just switch which one is visible. And I mean, it's an SVG, so if you want to get really creative, you could even inline the SVG and like animate what's going on with it and everything. But we're just going to do this the easy way. So let's just do an image. Before I even do anything, I am going to do an area hidden equals true. And this is the opposite of my visually hidden, where it's saying like this image is just something that shouldn't be paid any attention to. I don't know if we actually need that on an image if we have a blank alt attribute here, but just to be safe, it doesn't hurt. So I'm going to throw that on there. Even though I am using quite a bit of area in this site in general, but if you're new to area and you haven't seen it before, and these things to help assistive technologies, the general rule of thumb is the less area that you need, the better. But I think in this case, we're fine with that one. So let's go into our images. We'll get the first one, which is icon, that's my icon close. We'll get that and duplicate it. And I'm guessing that it's icon open. I don't see it there. Oh, hamburger, maybe H. It is hamburger. Okay, so there we go. So we get the two of them. We should probably give these a class. Give these IDs too, I guess, but we'll give it a class. And you know what, we'll stick with the image names because it's icon hamburger and then class is equal to icon close. I think that makes sense. So there we go. So we have a whole bunch of stuff in here, but we need to get that all sorted out. So let's start with the visually hidden class right here. Now I have this off screen. I'm just going to grab it. This is from, actually, I'll bring it on screen just so you can see where it's coming from. allyguidelines.orange.com. It's their company, but they're just showing how they do it. And actually they call it visually hidden as well. And it just makes something be completely visually hidden. I'll also link, Scott O'Hara has a really good article that dives into it as well. So I'll probably put a link to that in the description as well. For these, we'll come back up into my utility classes. I'm going to come up probably pretty high, actually. I'm going to put it as my first one, just where I tend to put it. And you can see now the word menu has vanished. Perfect. And here in this, we have my button, which is my mobile nav toggle. So I am going to be a little bit more explicit just to make sure like we're sticking with that. So I'm not going to, or yeah, actually we need to do it here anyway. So we're going to have that. And we also then want to have the same thing for my dot icon hamburger. No, that's not true. We don't want we don't want that one. We want icon close for now, and I'm just going to do a display none on there. Display none, so it vanishes, and we just have the hamburger icon itself. Perfect. So let's come on this one and do a cursor pointer. We also want to have a background of none, or transparent, I guess. Transparent. I think none would do the same thing. Border 0, and I'm going to give it a little bit of padding, just to give it a bit of size, even though we can't see that size. I might regret that, we'll see. But I want to make sure it's a big enough clickable area, but for aligning things, I'll think about that. And there's ways that we could work around that with custom properties too, to get that to be set up properly. Cool. So let's come here and actually let's just put a comment here for navigation so we can easily find it when we're looking for it. Primary nav. We want to have some distance between here and the top of my page. Let's do it this side, I guess. About 45 pixels, so 45, let's just say margin top of var, because we have our spacer classes, so space size, let's just see how that looks. It's not working because I don't want it on there. I want it on my primary header, primary header. There we go. Okay, great. So let's just compare. Maybe we can do a 700 on there, and there we go. So that's good. Another thing that we want to do, I don't think we actually need to, usually these hamburger menus, positioning absolute, have to use position absolute. But I think in this case, we can just throw a display flex on here, display flex, to get things to go next to each other. Let me just come take a look. But we have a container and then we have this stuff. So let's come here, and this is where, do we want to use a flex utility class? So because we could do flex, but then we also need space between, and probably just for how it's going to look here, where everything's looks like it's centered, we probably want to do it all. Just let me think here. So we need this, and then we can close that down here, hit save to format it. Do we do it with the utility class or something else? How often are we going to need flex on this site? Not very much. So it's you know, is it worth building out like a whole set of utility classes with Flexbox is the real question. And I don't think so. So I'm going to call this my nav wrapper. And in my nav wrapper, so we can come here and do nav wrapper, is display flex. And that should get them. There we go. Whoops. Oh yeah, that's okay. Perfect. Okay. It's like, oh my goodness, what's happening? So we'll do an align items of center, just because that will... Wait, what? Why does align item center... that was weird. No? I was like, what happened to all the stuff I did? This button's only visible at larger screen sizes. So what I'm going to do for the moment is style equals display none on there. And I'm doing it as an inline style to remind myself to turn this off later. Because if I put it in my CSS, I often forget that I have it, and I'm looking around, I'm just getting frustrated. Whereas here, it's really easy to spot an inline style, or it stands out for me. So I'm putting it there as a little bit of a reminder. And obviously things don't look quite the way we want, but let's do that. And here we're going to do a justify content space between, so it spreads things out. But obviously this shouldn't be here. We just want this, and we only want the button. So how can we do that? I'm going to come in, and some people don't like that I do this. We're actually going to have to do... We're going to do something else here too at the same time, which is going to be my mobile nav toggle display none. And the reason I'm doing that, which breaks everything apparently, but that's okay, is because all of this, I actually want to wrap it inside of... Why is that? That's so weird sometimes when I save, some styles aren't. Anyway, it's fine, it's fine. Mobile nav toggle display none, because at large screens I don't actually want it there, but what we want it to be is at the smaller screens. So I'm going to do an at media, and I'm going to do a max width. And this is where some people, when I've done this previously, have been like, Kevin, are you sure this is not mobile first? And as much as you're going to see a lot of the styling here does tend to be mobile first, I'm a very big proponent of mobile first, but it's not necessarily because it's mobile first that I want to do. It's because I want the path of least resistance. If I style all of this to look like this, and then I have to change it to look like this, I have to overwrite a lot of styles. I don't want to have to overwrite a lot of styles. I want to just start over from a blank canvas again. Most things, you're not overwriting when you're adding complexity. Mobile navs, you're adding complexity to them. So it doesn't make sense to me to do it mobile first and then have to... Okay, I have to overwrite my display property. I have to overwrite how the flex is working. I have to overwrite how this is working. It just becomes a lot of things, and it becomes a lot more work and a lot more maintenance than it needs to be. So, and then what we can do is have my, this is my nav itself. That's my UL, right? So this, or I guess we can say it's my primary navigation. So dot primary navigation is going to be a display of none. And we have to think a little bit of how we're actually going to get this to work. That should save. Are we not at a big enough screen size? Why do we see this still? Primary navigation. Kevin. See, I'm used to doing mobile first. Smaller, smaller, and it vanishes and then comes in. Okay, good. That's what we want. That's the behavior that we're after. And I'm just confusing myself. So let's open up my DevTools just so I can put responsive mode on. It just makes it easier to sort of play around with and have the smaller size. You can zoom that back to 100. And so when we get to this point, you can see that's happening. So at the same time that this is happening, we also want to take this. So it's, we can grab all of these styles actually. and bring them up into here. And we can also say this is a display of block, just so there it appears. Perfect. Now I'm doing a display none for now, just because we're just going to turn it on and off. Maybe we could even animate it in and out. It's an option. I think I'm going to keep it fairly simple, and this could be something if you want to take it up a notch. So it doesn't even have to be display none. You could translate it off the page and like have it appear or slide down, or there's different options here. But we're going to do this just to keep it fairly simple. So now we need to, when we click, everything just sort of happens and our navigation appears on the page. So what can we do and how can we do all of this? And what are some of the considerations that we need to take into here? So right now, let's go and open up this so I can get to my JavaScript, because we will need to obviously add some JavaScript to make this work. So I'm going to come to here and let's do a const, and let's start with the button itself. So nav toggle is going to be equal to document.query selector, and we want to select my I think I called it nav, I already forgot, mobile nav toggle, right there. Bring that in, and we are good to go. And when writing JavaScript, we tend to need a little bit longer. There we go. So we need that. We need my const primary navigation is going, or I guess primary nav is long enough, is document.query selector, and that's my primary, primary navigation, 90% sure that's what I called it. Perfect. Which is making me wonder if I should have put this here, or do I style this? Could just be my UL. We'll have the whole, we'll say we're going to move that back there. I think it makes more sense, actually. We'll move that back there. Okay. So yeah, so that's good. And now let's make a really simple, we'll start very simple and then we'll make it a bit more complex. So the first thing is we want to do my nav toggle and do an add event listener. We want to listen for a click, and when somebody clicks, we want to do something. So we can throw in an arrow function here. And what do we want to do? So for now, I'm not going to leave it like this, but for now, what we're going to do is come in and say, we're going to say that the primary nav class list, let's just do a toggle for now, just so we can do something really, really simple. And what do we want to toggle? Let's just put in something that we can play around with. So the class list, we're going to toggle is open, opened. And again, we're not going to keep things this way, but I just want to make sure that everything's working. So here, let's just say dot opened is a display of block. Actually, we should probably do a display fixed. And with that, when we click, it should, oh, position fixed. I do that a lot, position. And here's display none. So we'll do display block just so it, anyway, we're going to change this. I just want to see if it's working. So there we go. We can actually see it goes open and closed. But now, we could leave it like that. We could style things up and get them working. But once again, from an accessibility point of view, this isn't ideal. So what we're going to do is let's jump back on over to here. And the reason for that is when we toggle something, there's a few things. First of all, if you remember, when we set all of this up on here, we said that we have an area control. So what are we controlling? But there is another thing we actually want to do on here, which is an area expanded is equal to true or false. So we're going to start that as a false by default, because when someone first visits the site, the navigation will be closed. And you want to do expanded, not expended. So area expanded equals false. So this is saying we're controlling my navigation menu, and right now my navigation is not expanded. And then what we can do to sort of link into this whole thing, and we could use a class and have is opened, is closed, or other things. But as I said, I do like using data attributes. And now what we could do is we come on here, and so we have my primary navigation is currently disappeared. But what we want to do is enable it. So when, and there's a few different ways. I've done this a different way before, but why don't we do it like this? We can do primary navigation. Data visible. So here, let's just do a display block. and do the position fixed again, position fixed. And let's delete my open here. And so what we can actually do here in the JavaScript, instead of toggling the class, we could do a toggle attribute. And toggle attribute, we could just say is visible, data visible. And now we should see we can toggle it open and closed. Doesn't look like it's actually position fixed though, but it is showing up and closing. So that's a good start. Oh, fixed. Gotta spell it right. There we go. So it's opening and closing, and we can see that's working. So yeah, already off to a pretty good start there. There is one other thing that we'd want to do with that though, because I just did add in my area expanded, and we want to toggle this and switch it around depending on what's happening. So let's come back to the JavaScript here. What we want to do is actually check for this attribute. So when we click, before we switch the attribute, because if we switch it, we'd have to do this the other way around. So this is going to happen before it gets changed. So right now we have nothing, and then when we click on it, it's adding it in. So when we click, if it's not currently visible, which let's pretend it's, well, right now it's not currently visible. So what we could do here is primary nav, and we can check if it has attribute before it toggles it, so we know which one it actually has. So has attribute data visible. And we can do this with a, is it called a ternary operator? So whoops, this and then that. And then, so this is like, if it's true, do this. And if it's false, do this. So we can pass it something. So let's just do one for now, console log of true. And then here we can throw in a console log of it doesn't. And now if we go and let's inspect and go to my console, and if we click, it doesn't, true, it doesn't, true, it doesn't, true. And again, this is the, if we put this after here, it would be the other way around. But what we want to do is, if it is true, we want to go to my primary, not my primary nav, we want to go to my nav toggle and set attribute. And the attribute that we want to set is the area expanded. And we want to set it to true. True, yes. We're going to have to double check this. I might be getting it backwards. And if not, we want to set it to false. We're going to see if it's the other way around. I'll just switch the order here. So let's go and take a look again in the console, or not in the console. This time we want to look at the element. So let's go find my navigation. And here we have my mobile nav toggle, and the area expanded is false. So if I click on it, oh, see, I got it backwards. Or we can just switch this false and true. So now, if my menu is closed, it's saying that it's expanded is false. When I click, now my menu is showing and the area expanded is true. And then we have a false, and then we have a true. So perfect. That's working just like we want it to, which is awesome. So let's style up that navigation now. We've done all the hard work. The JavaScript part of it is done. We have the area attributes that are switching around just like we need them to. This is switching based on a data attribute, which again could be a class, but I'm going to do it this way. And this could be done, you know, with if-else statements as well if you don't like doing it like this. Just I decided to take a different approach this time than I usually do. So cool, that's good. Let's shrink this down a little bit. And let's get this styled up to look a little bit like this. And we also have this gradient in the background, but that I think will be fine. So that's my primary navigation. So display none, but we can do all of this here anyway, because that display none will get turned off when it's important. And what do we want it to look like? So let's give it a, because it does have, and even this position fixed can come to here, that's fine. And I'm going to do an inset of, so inset is top, bottom, left, and right. I'm going to do an inset of, I want it off the top. Is it balanced here? I sort of want to balance it out, but we want to keep it simple enough. Let's just do var size 900 for now and see where that puts it. Save. Wow, we need a little bit more. Too bad. But the left and the right, I don't actually want that. So that's only for my top. Then my left and the right, we want to do a var size 400, I think. Perfect. And then, so actually here, let's just, not perfect, not ideal, but 5 rem. We're not using, oh, was it already 5? 7 rem. Just to push it down a smidgen more. Okay, so if that's the case, okay, so with inset, let's add the background now. Background is my var neutral 100. So it's covering all of that. Let's just do the neutral 900. Just so we can see it, and then I'll switch the background color on it after. But you can see it's filling up roughly the space I want, except on the bottom. And that's because we have the inset here as well. So I'm actually going to put auto here. So the height is matching the height of the element. So this is like ignoring the bottom of your top, bottom, left, and right. I've set a top, I've set a left and a right, but I'm not setting a bottom. We can set a border radius on here. Border radius, var size 4. Too much, 200. That looks not too bad. Maybe it's even a 100 though. I think that's closer. Okay, good. Then we want to do, I honestly think the easiest thing here is to do, this is going to get a display grid instead of a display flex, just so then I can get my gap property. So gap is going to go to var, you can do this with flex too, but grid's already stacked, so I don't have to change a flex direction. Size 600. Oh, I'm doing this on the primary navigation. That's okay. So we can just come here and say, that was my nav list, right? Nav list. And I'm doing this again. This is all in my max width one. If this was outside of my max width, I'd have to overwrite a whole bunch of stuff. So this can go back to being display block, actually. And this will be a display grid. And then do gap of my var size. We'll try 400. That's not terrible. Nav list A. Or on the nav list itself, I always try with typography to do as much as possible to take advantage of inheritance. So here we can do our text align center. Here let's just do color white so we can see it for now, color white, and we'll turn that off after. And one thing we will do right away though is a text decoration of none. Perfect. So the font size on here, we have one. Font size was my font size nav, because we had a specific one for there. Oh, see this actually. This is one of the ones, I'm going to take this off from here. We're going to come outside of the media query and do this here, .nav list. And that's because it's the same font size in both mobile version and the other one, so I don't want this in my max width, or I'd have to write it 2 times. But here we do have a font weight that's different. So font weight is my font weight bold at this screen size, which was different at the other screen size. This gap actually needs to be a bit bigger. That looks a lot better. So that's good. If I have my gap of 600, I also want to then say this is going to have inset, we'll do the padding here, padding of the same var size 600. And it actually looks bigger on the top and bottom, eh? We'll do an 800. 700? Perfect. And obviously they look different right now, but part of that I think is just because the screen, okay, it's open, right? Like if this is narrower, it's going to look much more similar, and of course the colors are wrong. But I think overall that's looking pretty good. Now, do I want it fixed? I don't think I want it fixed, because that's kind of weird that I can scroll and then close that. So I will do this, instead of fixed, I'm going to do absolute. So now if I do scroll down, like I don't have a menu that I can't close, since I don't have a position fixed on this guy. So let's fix my colors, because maybe we're done. I don't know what that's actually supposed to look like when we hover on top. So we will give those links a hover state too. But for now, we're going to do the colors. So here, color will be my color It's the dark one, which is the primary 400. Maybe that's where it's actually black. Well, whatever, we're doing that. And the background here is actually the 100. And then let's copy this, and we want to do my hover and my nav list. A focus. These are links, so focus or focus visible doesn't really change too much. Oh, I just realized we didn't change our icon yet, so we still need to do that. Sorry about that. We'll get that a little bit more JavaScript to do then. So here the text decoration doesn't matter. We can just change this to my accent color. So now that looks better. Of course we can't hover, but I can do this to see, and I see it's working. Perfect. Okay, awesome. I don't mind that hover color, the focus ring on there either. It doesn't bother me at all. So that looks good. I'm happy with that. So yeah, let's fix what's happening. Oh, we need the drop shadow. Let's do the drop shadow first, and then we'll do that. So I think for the drop shadow thing, we're going to do here, primary navigation, because I need it to be behind that. Yes. And we're going to do the before or after. We'll do an after. Doesn't make a difference really. Content, because we need to have content on a pseudo element. Display. You don't need a display because I'm going to do a position of, in this case, this is one of those things that what would this look like? I don't really want to disable scroll because I hate the fact that we can see like this doesn't make me feel like scrolling should be disabled, but maybe. Okay, let's bring the, so let's just do an absolute for now and see what actually happens here. And you know what? I think there's actually a drop shadow on the menu as well, a very subtle one. We'll bring, let's do that first. Box shadow of 0, maybe it's down a smidgen? No, I don't think so. 0, 0, 0.5 M RGB, 0, 0, 0, 0.25? 0.15? It's really subtle. I think that might even be too dark, but or maybe this is too big. Something like that. Yeah, something like that where it's really, really subtle. Maybe it's a bigger blur. I'm gonna stick with that. I don't know. I could check out what it is in the Figma, but whatever, that's okay. It's not very noticeable anyway. And then here, inset of 0, so it's taking up the whole page if I do this. And then linear gradient, just to see if this is working. Linear, I do this a lot, right? Background, image, linear gradient. Let's just do red to blue and see if it's working. Oh no, it is working, but not how I wanted it to. Because this is position absolute. Oh no. Okay, so that raises up a problem. I was hoping we'd have some problems, and so I could solve them while we're going through. So right now I'm putting that position absolute on the pseudo element, but the element I'm putting it on already has a position on it. So because it has a position that is not static on it, the position absolute of the pseudo element is also linked into here. If this wasn't a gradient, there's ways of working around it. I'm just trying to think if there's a way I can work around it now, or one way we could work around it is fixed, because fixed will then go full screen. So I could do fixed there and then do a Z. Oh, but now this might also present problems as well, because it goes on top of most stuff. And it doesn't create quite that layering that we want. This is an interesting problem. I could work with my nav wrapper. That might be the solution. Or even the primary header. Do we want to do it on the primary header? I guess that sort of makes the most sense. Because it's already layered, I wouldn't have to worry about the Z index as much then. Let's try that then. So the only issue there is we'd have to toggle it on and off as well. The one workaround that we could do, if as I said, if this wasn't a gradient, the easy workaround, it's not a perfect solution by any means, but one of the things you could do is without this. So we'll comment that out. We could do the box shadow here actually. Let's do a second one. So you can do as many box shadows as you want. So I'm going to do 0, 0, and then it's my spread. So we'll do a spread of 100 Vmax to make it just gigantic, no blur, and then RGB 0.5. I'm mixing up RGB syntaxes, which isn't great, but by doing that, let's make this bigger so we can see what it's done. So you can see it actually, I'll make this a bit more, a bit darker. Or did I do this the wrong way? I did. 0, 0, 0, 100 Vmax. And then what that's doing is it's covering, basically it's a box shadow that's covered everything. The only problem, like it's, well, there's, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. Whatever, 1,000. And then you might still run into an issue. But I can also, I could select the text that's under here if there's buttons and stuff, like I can still interact with the button. So it's not an ideal fix, it's just one that we can use. But yeah, we won't do that. I think the better one is actually to, so we want that, let's just come here, or I'll do it at the top just because I like the order, const primary header equals document dot query selector of dot primary header. So when we do that, we could just toggle primary nav and then my primary header toggle attribute data overlay. Sure. So here, instead, we can comment this back on now. So when we click, it's going to add a data overlay to my primary header. So here, we don't need that. We can just do primary header. So actually, oh, it's going to cause all sorts of problems. Oh, not working at all. Oh, primary header, data overlay. So now, at least it's working, except we need that to go to the top. So the easiest way to fix that issue with it not going to the top right now is, oh, we have position fixed. Inset 0. Inset is 0. It's probably because of the margin top. I'm thinking if I switch that to padding, there we go. So we could do that, and then instead of having that red to blue, we could have this go from RGB 000 over 0, so that's transparent, to an RGB of 000 over 0.8. I'm doing a big one, just so when it does go on, we get that. Now, if I scroll down, oh, it's position fixed actually, so it doesn't. So yeah, we can still scroll and you can still see, and I'm guessing we can still interact with what's underneath it. Oh, we don't. Oh, maybe that's like the best option actually. So let's look here. They don't really show you what's happening if somebody were to scroll. So I think I'm just, because it's a little awkward. Oh, I see what's happening. That's awkward. I didn't notice that was happening because we're changing that to position fixed. What if I did sticky instead? Ooh, weird. My gradient doesn't exist at all because sticky with the inset of 0. Height 100 VH. And then everything's underneath it. Urgh. So this is, so actually, okay, I'm going to do this as a before, because the issue that's happening, I don't want to change the display of the header because it's changing the flow if I switch that. Whereas if I do this as a pseudo element, I think it will solve that problem, except my pseudo element's not showing up at all because this should be here. My primary header data overlay before, which is now covering that, so I can't close it. I can interact with this still at least, but these are all getting covered up. Okay, so if I do that, I actually, because we are graying it out, I'm thinking I want to make changes. The button is going to get changed. I do apologize, but I said we wanted to sort of work. This is primary navigation. This is going to get a display of fixed, which means I'm going to have to probably move it on my own. Top var size 600. I don't remember what number I needed. And a right of var size 400. Z index of 100. Where's my button? I did display again. Display, what did I have that as? It was block, okay. Oh man, in a position of fixed. If I turn these off, I'm just curious, do I need them? We could just do it right, maybe? I do want to keep this one on, and whoops, oh my goodness, these comments are going crazy. Okay, and 6. 7? And if that's a position of fix, then we want the primary navigation to also become fixed, which shouldn't cause any other issues. It's not ideal, I think. I'm not in love with it, but I think it works better. We're shadowing out what's behind it anyway. And, you know, if you're opening it, you shouldn't really be scrolling, I guess. It's kind of weird with the gradient because you sort of have to make it, or you turn off scrolling too. That's the other option. We could do that. You could select the body, set the height to 100 VH, and that, yeah, that could work as well. It's not perfect, but I'm going to stick with this. I think that works okay. Yeah, I think that works okay. The next thing we're going to do is let's go and get to large screen sizes now. What happens when we get to that bigger size? And let's just bring this full screen now. So when we get to here, this obviously shouldn't look like that. And my button disappears, which is fine. It doesn't even matter what the data attribute on there is for visible or not visible. We have two things we need to do. The first is bring our button back on. And that was the one that we had the display of none on. So we need to let's fix that first so it is gone because if not, it breaks everything. So I think for this, I don't really do this often, but we're gonna have a class of button and we're going to do a, I don't do this a lot, so I don't have a good name for it, but I basically want to display none or like hidden at small sizes, hidden small. I think we'll do like a display small, no, not small, medium block, I guess. You know, turn it on, or it wouldn't be block though. We're gonna do, I didn't do it on them because we don't have any icons. Often it's inline flex. In this case, it'd be inline block. Display medium. This would be something where it'd be really useful to have, like, to be able to tell it to go to like what that class would normally have. Do we do an inline flex or just a? Yeah, we'll just do inline flex. It's more useful on buttons, so you know we'll do that as a default on our buttons while we're here, even though I hadn't done that yet. So display medium inline flex. So that means let's go back up to my utility. Let's find my buttons dot button. So I didn't change it. So here we can just do display inline flex, which shouldn't change anything with them, but it just, if we needed to add icons or other things, this just makes life a lot easier. And then if we come to here to my utility classes, display, I did MD, and this is where like building out a whole bunch of these could be useful. It's sort of like a bootstrap style thing, but I'm going to bring in what I need just for now. Display medium, inline, flex. Actually, this should be within the media query. At include at media min width of, that was my 50M that we've been using. And actually the 50M is not too bad. It's a number I often use. I do like a 40 or a 50, and then 50 is a little bit bigger, but in this case it seems to be working. Display inline flex. So if I do that, save that, is that what I called it? Display MD inline flex. Copy that. Oh, but I want it display none when it's small. Display small none. This is where you could rely on at media, or it's for a small, so display small none, display none. That's not working. This is the fun. I'm so used to using Sass to bring in my stuff. Okay, that's okay. I'm just going to grab all my utility classes. I tend to put them up higher here, but utility classes should overwrite anything else, sort of how they work. So I'm actually going to bring the utility classes at the bottom. This is the fun of the cascade. Because what was happening was, and the way I'll show you how I found it, because it took me a second. I was just looking in here and I saw display none, and it was there and it was working, but this was crossed off because this one wasn't. And it's just because the order of things were in the cascade. So this was getting, it was lower down, so it was winning. So yeah, utility classes, having them lower as like the last thing, so they always win, is usually kind of useful. So if we do look at it from the responsive mode now, it's gone and comes back and it goes away. So that's perfect. So yeah, in general, with these types of things, you probably build out more of a system than I have here. But all the small ones, like the assumption would be small and up, and then you could overwrite them with things that were in the media queries that go up from there. I'm not going to write out all of these manually, because using something like Sass or something to generate, same with these, like these are useful to have. But you'd want something to generate these utility classes for you if you're going to be going that route. Okay, Nav Navigation Primary. So let's jump into that next. So here, let's go above. Media queries always come after anything. So up here, we can just come in. Yeah, because then the media query will overwrite what's up higher. And so I could do this within another media query that's only for large screens, but I don't think we need to. And if we find out we do, I can always change stuff around. But we can do a nav list is display. Oh, maybe we will flex. Is that going to break stuff here or not? Ah, see, it broke nothing. Because these are overwriting it at that other side. Gap of var size 400. And again, I'm using these variables. You could just put in the size that you want. But the nice thing with the variable is that, I change the size 500 and it changes it everywhere all in one shot. So I don't have to like I'm not changing things over and over again. I'm setting up my variables and it's actually pretty big, that space. So maybe this would be like an 800, 700. Cool. And what we want to make sure, see, we're getting really, really close. That's sort of the limit. It is a little narrower here, but what I might actually do is do this as a clamp. So clamp, the smallest would be like a var size 400 or 500. Then we could do a 5 VW, and I'm just guessing var size 800. So as it's getting wider, you can see that it's actually growing and it's actually shrinking the space in between them. It just helps prevent any worries about hitting like a collision where they'll actually crash into each other. But as we have more space, they'll grow, but they won't infinitely grow. So if you get if you had an ultra wide and you did full screen it for some odd reason, they wouldn't end up with, a foot of space in between each one and overflow outside your container by putting them inside a clamp. Cool. So pretty happy with that. I think that's actually looking pretty good. We just need to do a little bit of styling on them. So a few things that I did. are here, which I'm actually just going to take this out of here and bring those here, because these will work in both cases. And the last thing is the font weight. Font weight was actually the font weight semi-bold, which we overwrite at the other size. So let's take a look at what this is looking like at this size in a little bit more detail and make sure we're happy with it. But I think that looks pretty good. Let's compare it to this. Now their spacing is a bit tighter than mine. So maybe this clamp could be a 6 and this I could drop it down to a 4 maybe. So maybe that would be a 7. Yeah, something like that looks pretty good. And then as it gets smaller at one point, they'll start creeping in on each other a little bit. And then, boop, right when we need it to, I got lucky on that. This actually is looking kind of ugly, that it's stretching that whole size. So let's just fix that a little bit. We don't, I think it's nice. I think it's switching at the right time, but it's not looking fantastic. So even though I have the inset on here, I can also do a max width of say, I don't know, 35 rem and a margin inline of auto to keep it centered. It looks like 35 is a bit big, 30, 25. There we go. So that looks a little better. So when we're here, it's kind of weird. Maybe it should be on the left. Should it be on the left just because the menu's on the left? Would that make more sense? Maybe that would actually make more sense. So here we just do a margin left of auto, and then it should stick on the left side. So yeah, I guess that makes more sense just because my button's here. I don't know which one's better. I'll let you decide. I'll stick with it like that just so it stays closer to my button. They're both okay, I guess. They're both a bit of a compromise. At the smaller screen sizes, it's fine. And yeah, so that's good. Now, we do need to do some more work on this, but our navigation's looking okay. I mean, the rest of the site's not terrible, but there is some work that needs to be done. The next one, we're probably gonna do some like just general layout things because everything's so crunched together and smushed together. So I think we'll tackle that in the next video, and then from there, we'll get into the more specifics of different things in each section that need to be fixed up. And we'll sort of go through on the more individual things like getting the numbers in here, getting the carousel working, spacing things out a little bit better. And finally, the footer down here at the bottom and making sure that's all good to go as well. And so the next video in that, where we keep on working on this, will be out in a couple of days if you're watching these as they come out. So if you haven't yet subscribed and you don't want to miss out, don't forget to subscribe. And with that, a very big thank you to my supporters of Awesome over on Patreon, Jan, Johnny, Patrick, Simon, and Tim, as well as all my other patrons for their monthly support. And of course, until next time, don't forget to make your corner of the internet just a little bit more awesome.